Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wargiven Racing Hub here with another Wargiven Racing podcast. So, today we will be recapping the qualifying race for the 24 hours of Daytona and then talking about some predictions for the actual 24-hour race this weekend, as well as diving into the first open wheel category of the season, Formula E, which starts tomorrow in Saudi Arabia. So, first talking about the qualifying race for Daytona. Uh, excuse me. The Wayne Taylor Racing number 10 finished first in the DPI machine after surviving a late lunge from the JDC Miller Motorsports Cadillac. Um, the number 5 was leading throughout most of the race, but due to some traffic issues, the number 10 was able to slip by, and the late lunge by the second driver in the number 5 was unable to get past. Third place, a strong finish for the 48 Ally Cadillac, who had Jimmy Johnson take the initial stint, which saw him drop back a little bit, but then I believe it was Kobayashi. Let me just make sure I'm saying that right. Yes, Camus Kobayashi hopped in the car and brought them back up into third place. So the qualifying race scores points for the full season, but as you can see, it does not count towards the Michelin Endurance Cup. That will only be counted for the actual endurance races themselves. The number 60 Meyer Shank finished in fourth, with the two Chip Ganassi cars finishing fifth and sixth, and then the 31 Wellen Engineering team finishing seventh. There is good news, though, for both the 01 Cadillac and the 31 Cadillac, as the 01 Cadillac was running up front, but due to a speeding penalty coming onto pit road for the driver's swap, they fell back in the field, and it's impressive that they still managed to finish in front of their sister car, who kind of had a quiet day. And then the number 31 was forced to come in early for a quick pit stop. I'm not exactly sure why they came in that early, but they tried a fuel gamble and it did not work, and they ended up having to make an extra pit stop. So now we move on to LMP2, which had the two PRI1 Matheson Motorsports cars absolutely dominate the field, as I believe they finished at least 40 seconds in front of the third place G-Drive Racing by APR. Really nothing to note from the rest of the group. There was a few contacts in traffic as they really struggled dealing with the increased GT field throughout the day. And that goes for the DPI category as well. And then LMP3 was won by Andretti Autosport, with the number 6 Molnar Motorsports America finishing in second and the 13 AWA finishing in third. An impressive fourth for the 47 Motorsports after they had a very early incident, which forced them to drop all the way back behind all the GT cars. And then they worked their way up through. As you can see here, Core Autosport did not start the race. I'm not sure why they did not start the race. The broadcasters never mentioned it. So they scored 0 points, as did everybody in both LMP2 and LMP3, since the Daytona 24 Hours race only counts for their Michelin Endurance Cup and not their full season points. My prediction struggled a lot. Again, not really getting any screen time with the number 74 Riley Motorsports, which was, I believe, no, it was tied for my worst prediction of the weekend, as we'll see later. As we move on to GTD Pro, which had TR3 Racing come through the field after the pit stops to pass the number 9 FAF Motorsports, and at the time the number 2 KCMG Porsche, in order to win the pole for the Daytona 24 Hours. FAF Motorsports had a strong second place finish, followed by the 15 Proton car, which is the third co-entry between Proton and WeatherTech Racing. And NASCAR Cup rookie Austin Cindric was actually in this car and performed pretty well. Then Heart of Racing with Aston Martin in fourth, and then Vasir Sullivan in fifth, followed by the two Corvettes, who really struggled. I believe they got another BOP, or balance of power, weight increase, so we'll see if that helps or hurts. But the real disappointment is the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team debuting their new BMW M4s, and they really were just off the pace throughout the day. GTD Pro didn't really have any major incidents, except for fighting with the GTD AM class, as IMSA decided to start the class based off of overall qualifying time, not splitting it between Pro and AM. So there were Pro and AM cars racing each other for overalls in the GT classes, as well as within their respective class. One way to tell a difference if you end up watching the 24 hours is the GTD Pro rear wings and side mirrors will have red on them, and the GTD AM cars will have green side mirrors and rear wing end plates. So as we move on to the final class, and by far the largest class, Windward Racing, winners of last year's race, won the pole for this year's race. So let's see if they can do the double and win the race as well. Followed up by I believe the debut from the 59 Crucial Motorsports McLaren, and then Vassar Sullivan with a strong third place. There were a few incidents throughout the race. Overall, it was actually a pretty clean day. The number 66, I know, had, I believe, an incident with a DPI class, as into turn one, the two DPI leaders split the number 66 Acura, which was quite hairy for them, as the exit of turn one is immediately into the little kinks going down to the first international horseshoe, and they nearly got sideswiped. And then the real incident was between, I believe, the 27 and the 71, where they collided going back on right before the banking, causing the 27, I know, to retire, and it looks like the 71 to retire as well. And then finally at the bottom, Paul Miller Racing, well, since they don't have their BMW M4 yet, they are unable to make it this year to Daytona, which will put them a little bit farther behind the field, but, so is life. So as you can see, the points for the GTD AM class and the GTD Pro class have a much greater spread than up here in the DPI class, as DPI spread is only 11 points compared to GTD Pro's spread of 17 points, and then GTD AM spread of 26 points. So if this car count keeps up, especially for GTD, we could see the championship being won or lost based off qualifying positions, as that's what helps determine points. And fun fact, last year's championship was decided on qualifying points, because the first place number 31 and the second place number 10 both actually had the same amount of race points, but the 31 qualified better throughout the year, and thus on those points won the championship. So now moving over to the predictions for the 24 hours. You can see here the results of my last predictions. I predicted the Wayne Taylor Racing Acura to win the DPI class, and I was spot on with that. I kind of took a cheap route with the LMP2 prediction, as I chose a two-team car, the PRI1 Matheson Motorsports, and they also finished first, and they finished 1-2. My LMP3 guess was quite far off, as Riley Motorsports really struggled and finished last of the starters in LMP3. GTD Pro was pretty good, as Pfaff Motorsports finished second on their GTD Pro debut. And then for GTD AM, the Heart of Racing team finished 21st after making contact with the Lamborghini. So I'll take 3 out of 5. For my first predictions, I'll definitely take 3 out of 5. So moving on to my predictions for the 24 hours. For the DPI class, I'm predicting the 01 from Chip Ganassi Racing to win, as they had the pace. They just made small errors in this qualifying race, but they got it out of their system now. And I can really see them pushing up and winning the overall. For LMP2, I'm going to take the cheap way out again, and I'm going to pick PR1 Matheson Motorsports. I believe with their two very strong cars, it is theirs to lose. But who knows? It's a 24-hour race. Anything can happen. There's 61 cars, and 59 of them are not the LMP2s of PRI1 or Matheson, so there may be contact. For LMP3, I'm going to go with the third place finishing AWA, as LMP3 is really the class where you could pick anybody, and they've got a good shot. For GTD Pro, I think it's going to be FAF Motorsports. I believe it was Philippe Nasser. That's a rookie in terms of his GTD Pro IMSA experience. And he got stronger throughout the entire qualifying race. And I think him and the lineup from the defending GTD champions from last year will end up winning the GTD Pro category. And then I am going to go with Vassar Sullivan for winning the GTD AM, as they had a very strong qualifying race, and I think that they will be able to push on and kind of get over that hump that they seem to be. They always seem to be in contention, at least from what I watched last year, and then something would go wrong. Whether there's a tire or an engine or contact. I think this race is the race they put it together. They win the GTD AM category. So just moving on to some random predictions for the race. I believe that the overall leader at the halfway point of the race, so at 12 hours, will not win the race. I cannot remember last year if that happened, as I was not able to stay up for the overnight part, which at 12 hours, it should be between 3:30 and 4 a.m. in the morning on the eastern coast of the United States, so I may be awake. Hopefully I will. If not, I'll watch some replays and get the status on that. I have that a GTD AMP car will finish on the overall GTD podium. Most likely, I'm going to say that's going to be third place, but I would not be surprised if it was a second place. And then LMP2 and LMP3 will have winners by more than a lap. That happened several times last year, where either one car was on the lead lap or no cars were on the lead lap when it came to the end of the race. I think that because of the speed difference between DPI, LMP2, and then the GT cars, the LMP2 will struggle, but they're more likely to have multiple cars on the same lap, while LMP3 is maybe slightly faster than the GTD cars. So I feel like they're going to struggle a lot more with the traffic than the other classes. And then my final prediction for this race is that 3 different manufacturers will be on the GTD AM podium, which should not be wholly difficult, as it already has happened in GTD Pro with the Lamborghini, the Porsche, and I think the Mercedes finishing on the podium. So I think that this is a definite possibility for the GTD AM. So, how to watch. Coverage will rotate from NBC to NBCSN, and then the NBC Sports app for those in the United States. And then anyone outside of the United States can watch it on IMSA.com. If you follow the World Endurance Championships Twitter, they posted a link to where you can watch it. I would recommend following that. You're kind of lucky you get to watch all of it on one place, while I have to flip throughout the channels. And then if you happen to be unable to watch and you need to listen on radio, it is on Sirius 216 and then Sirius XM channel 202, or on the Sirius XM app. And then when is the race? Race coverage starts at 3:30 EST, 8:30 GMT on Saturday, and will run till 4 p.m. EST, 9 p.m. GMT on Sunday. If you're in the United States, Prime NBC, which is a cable channel, will cover the first hour of the race and then the final 2 hours of the race. And if you have Track Pass for IMSA, you will be able to watch the whole thing without any commercials. So now we're going to transition to Formula E and do some predictions for them. So the 2021-22 Formula E Championship is the 8th season of the FIA Formula E and the 2nd year that it is a World Championship. This is also the final season for their Gen 2 cars, with the Gen 3 cars coming next year. I'm pumped for the Gen 3 cars, as not only do they look good, they may be able to be refueled, in air quotes, with a battery recharge during pit stops, which means more strategy, longer races. I'm excited for that, as my biggest gripe with Formula E It's a 45-minute race, which is about a good distance, but there's no pit stops. There's no tire strategy. The biggest strategy is when to take attack mode. And while I don't mind attack mode because it's not like they have DRS or anything and they're on street circuits, I would like to see pit stops. Pit stops are my favorite thing in any motorsport that I watch. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully having that. That aside, stepping off the soapbox, going through the teams, we've got the Neo 333 Formula E team with their own powertrain, the Neo 333001, with Oliver Turvey being joined by Formula F2 driver Dan Ticktum to complete a all-British lineup. Next, we have Envision Racing, which has changed their name from Envision Virgin Racing, and they will be running a customer Audi e-tron FE07 after Audi left, left the sport last year with their factory team, and they maintain Robert Frines, alongside with bringing in Nick Cassidy, who I believe drove DTM last year. I apologize if I get some of these facts wrong. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. Give you guys the most authentic reaction opinions that I have. So the Mercedes EQ Formula E team, the defending drivers and teams champion, in their final year of Formula E, which is only their third, retains the same lineup of Stoffel Van Dorn and Nick DeVries. Nick DeVries being your defending champion. Dragon Penske Autosport, not that Penske, a different Penske. I believe it's his son, who runs the Formula E team, has Sergio Seta Camara, who ran with the team last year, and then bringing in Formula E rookie but F1 veteran Antonio Giovinazzi. So let's see if Gio can rejuvenate his open wheel career this season in Formula E. And they will be running the Penske EV5 powertrain. Next, we have Jaguar TCS Racing running their own Jaguar I-Type 5 with the same lineup of Mitch Evans and Sam Bird. Very strong last year. Competed heavily in both the drivers and the team's championship and was very unlucky to lose the drivers' championship, as I believe it was Mitch Evans. No, let me double check that because I don't want to get that wrong. I believe it was Mitch Evans, though, that got wrecked out. Yes, Mitch Evans had to retire from the last race due to no fault of his own. And then next we move on to Rocket Ventura Racing, who is the customer Mercedes team. So we'll see what they do next year when Mercedes' factory team leaves the sport. And they brought in Lucas Degrassi to partner with returning Eduardo Martera. I think this driver lineup is sneakily good. I don't think they're the best on the grid, but I definitely think that this pairing is very strong. Next, we move on to DS Techeetah, who is running their own DS E-Tense FE21 and maintaining the lineup of Antonio Felix da Costa and Jean-Eric Verne, who had a disappointing year last year, but I am anticipating them to bounce back in terms of how competitive they are this year. And then next we have Nissan E-Dams with the Nissan IMO3 powertrain and bringing in two new drivers, I believe, as they have Maximilian Gunther and Sebastian Buemi. Another very strong, underrated lineup. I have them finishing very high up, as you'll see later on. Next, we have the Andretti Formula E team, who I will be rooting for because I am an American pleb and I support American teams, minus Haas, as I don't consider them American. Sorry, Dragon Penske, Andretti's my team. And they will be running the customer, they are now a customer BMW iFE21 engine user, as BMW pulled their factory support out after last year. And so they retain Jake Dennis, but bring in American IndyCar veteran Oliver Askew to the Formula E program. So he's making his debut. Mahindra Racing with their Mahindra M8 Electro, I believe, maintains the same lineup of Roland switched from Nissan. My bad. So Alexander Sims and Oliver Rowland, another all-British lineup for the Indian Racing team. And then finally we have the Porsche Formula E team running the Porsche 99X Electric, and they are maintaining Andre Lauderer and Pascal Wehrlein for their driver lineup. So, looking at their schedule real quick, as I mentioned earlier, they start this weekend in Diriyah, Saudi Arabia for the Diriyah E Prix. They return to the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez for the Mexico City E Prix after racing in um, Puebla, Puebla last season. Then we return to Rome for the Rome E Prix on the Circuit Catidino del Euro, or Ur. I apologize for my mispronunciation of these names. In April. And then we go to Monaco for the second time on the full circuit with a small change at the Neuve chicane. And that is at the end of April. I was unfortunately unable to catch this race live last year, but I watched the highlights and I was very upset that I missed it. As much as I like F1, the Monaco E Prix was so much better than the Monaco Grand Prix last year. And then they head to Berlin and the Tempelhof Airport Street Circuit in May for rounds 7 and 8, followed by heading to Indonesia for their first time for the Jakarta E Prix in June. Next, after a month break, they head to Vancouver for the first race in Vancouver on their Vancouver Street Circuit, which used to hold kart and champ car races. Then they transition from the Pacific West Coast to the Atlantic East Coast and race in New York City at the Brooklyn Street Circuit for a doubleheader in mid-July, and then ending July up with the London E Prix at the half indoor, half outdoor XL London Circuit. And then finally, we have the debut of the Seoul Street Circuit, which has been canceled twice due to COVID-19, finishing the season with the Seoul E Prix and rounds 15 and 16. As you can see here, there are, I believe, 7 races in Europe with the 3 doubleheaders, then Monaco, and then the other 9 races are spread out across the globe with Diriyah, Seoul, New York City having doubleheaders. So now we will transition to the predictions for Formula E. Which these are going to be very wrong. So, for my season predictions, I have in the Teams Championship, Jaguar Racing taking first place after finishing second last season. Mercedes EQ will take second, one step down from winning it all last year, followed by Diaz de Cheetah and Nissan E-Doms, who recover from poor seasons last year relatively, with Ventura Racing and their strong lineup moving up into 5th place. Or actually, I believe they'll drop down, but at the same time, I think the top 5 will all be separated by probably less than 25 points, meaning that they can all finish anywhere in that top 5. I think there's definitely going to be 3 distinct groups in Formula E this year. The top 5 I have predicted, then the next 4, then the bottom 2. So for Porsche, I have them finishing dead in the middle at 6th place, with Envision Racing finishing in 7th. And then, excuse me, I believe I'm having some small technical difficulties. I forgot to drop that down. Yeah, that would do it. I apologize, folks. So, looking at the Teams Championship, as I talked about, Jaguar, followed by Mercedes, followed by Diaz de Cheetah, followed by Nissan. Is it not? Okay, it's off now. All right. And then Porsche, or Nissan, Venturi, Porsche, and then I have Inversion Racing, followed by Andretti. Inversion and Andretti, Envision and Andretti, I see them dropping down as they are now customer teams, not receiving that full factory support. So I don't think they're going to be bad, but I don't think they're going to be fighting like they were last year for consistent race wins. And 9th, I have Mahindra. I'm not going to lie, I know the least amount about the Mahindra team. And looking at the other teams, I kind of put them a bit lower, because Formula E being a spec chassis with different powertrains, I really think that the driver talent matters. And not that their drivers aren't good or skilled, but just compared to the other lineups, I think they're going to struggle. And then we have the 2 back marker teams of Formula E, Neo 333, and then Penske Autosport, who I really don't see going really anywhere this season. I mean, I think they're going to get points. I think they're going to get maybe some podiums if they're lucky. I don't really see them competing for wins at all. And then heading onto the Drivers' Championship, I see Stoffel Van Dorn winning his first championship, retaining it from Mercedes, followed up by Sam Bird, who will finish runner-up. Then Jean-Eric Verne, followed by Mitch Evans and Nick DeFries, rounding out your top five. As you can kind of... Oh, and then Antonio Felix da Costa finishing sixth. So as you can tell, I think the first six are going to be that front three in the team's championship, with Jaguar just winning it over Mercedes and Cheetah. And then seventh, I have Sebastian Buemi. Eighth, Robin Frines. Ninth, Eduardo Martera. And then 10th, Lucas Degrassi. But anyone 7 through 14 in the championship, 16, I could see really getting up into that top 10 and competing for consistent podiums every race. And then, so just some season predictions. I believe Porsche will win its first FE race, Formula E race. The customer teams of Audi and BMW will struggle this season compared to last season. Every team will score a podium, as this is the final year of the Gen 2 car. They'll probably be working a lot on developing an engine for next year. And I can see some chaotic races as teams are going to go for broke this year in terms of getting all the points, getting that prize money, competing hard more so this year so that they can have more resources going into next year. And then no team will sweep a doubleheader weekend. So I believe that every doubleheader weekend, which there are 6 in Saudi Arabia, Rome, Berlin, USA, Seoul, and London, I don't think that a single team will win both. And then the top 2 in the championship, the Drivers' Championship, will crash in the penultimate race, which would be the first race at the Seoul Street Circuit in round 15. And then, so as the first race is this weekend, I've just got some quick predictions here. My race winner for race number 1 will be Stoffel Van Dorn with 3 different teams on the podium. And contrary to what I just said about there being mass chaos in Formula E this year, I believe that no safety cars will be deployed as my more out there prediction. For race 2, keeping in line with my no team will win twice in a doubleheader weekend, I believe Sam Bird will win. And then I also believe it will be a Jaguar 1-2. And then my more bold prediction is that there will be at least 6 retirements from the second Diriyah E Prix. And so race weekend information, how to watch. If you are in the U.S., you can watch on CBS Sports, which you do need a subscription to through your cable provider. They do not have a separate app that allows you to watch it. And then for the UK, Channel 4 Sport YouTube will have it. And then when I was looking up when the race was, the reason why there's only EST times here is because the EST and the GMT times were not matching up, meaning that I think that the GMT times are tape delayed versions. But if you want to know when the races are happening live, it will be 6:30 EST Friday, or that should be 6:30 a.m. EST tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow or Saturday in the late morning at 11:30 EST on the 29th for race 2. And so that wraps up. I just got some quick sources of where you can kind of find how to watch the Twitter for those outside the United States if they need to find the link to watch it on the website. And then finally, the different ways to watch Formula E, as they have all the countries that you can watch them in or watch them in, compared to myself only presenting the UK and the US. So that will wrap up today's stream, predicting the 24 hours of Daytona and recapping the roar before the 24 qualifying race, and then diving into the first weekend for Formula E. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate any predictions down in the comments, any likes, any subscriptions, and I hope that you all have a fantastic day.